morning. So I was like, man, I'm just starving. I need to get this done real quick. I need to go and get some food in my stomach first. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So I assume Cougar Bait is the name of your lure company.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Before we get
Yep.
into that, before we get into all that, maybe to back up a little bit, I know you live in Colorado now. Have you always lived in Colorado?
No, no, no. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yep, yep. I grew up there and moved out here when I was uh, 21. Yeah, 21, and I haven't really looked back since. That's for sure.
We moved from Portsmouth, Ohio,
Oh yeah.
last year, and same deal. Once we got out here, we're like, nope, we're never going back.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends in Portsmouth. I grew up in this little crappy little town called Milford, Ohio, right next to like Goshen and all that. That's where I grew up and lived there forever. Or not forever, but like 20 some odd years of my life. And I had some friends who moved out here and told me I was there. They moved out here doing log homework, and I was like talking to them about it. Next thing you know, they told me how much they're making doing that type of work, and I was like, that's literally double what I'm making in Ohio right now. I'm gone. I'm gone as fast as I can. I realized my lease was almost up on my apartment and all this stuff, and I was like, dude, there's nothing holding me here. I'm out of here.
Absolutely. So growing up in Cincinnati or in the Cincinnati area your whole life, did you get outside and fish a whole lot when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, yeah. My grandfather taught me how to fly fish for bass when I was like 4, and from a very young age I fished for just on weekends and stuff like that with parents, with my friends and whatnot. Because I don't know if you've ever heard of a pumpkin farm called Shaw Farms.
Mm-mm.
But so they have this huge lake on the back side of it, and my buddy's family owns it, and so we'd fish there all the time, growing up. And lo and behold, and my grandmother's pond that my grandfather taught me how to fish at. We fished for bluegills, bass, for all that, And then once I turned like 15, I entered 2 bass fishing tournaments, like clubs,
Mm-hmm.
like a tour on the BASS and FLW. And you did your club thing, and then once you graduate they find who's the best in the club, and then you go to state, and then you can go on to do opens and things like that. And my friend Joe Thomas, his son, Joe Thomas has 2. It's on the Outdoors channel and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 2 shows: Real in the Outdoors with Joe Thomas and Ultimate Match Fishing. Lo and behold, his son started a bass fishing club, and that was I did that till I was 19, and it was awesome. It was traveling all the time to go do different bass tournaments. My buddies and I would always go to Dale Hollow in Tennessee, fish for smallmouth and things like that. Because Dale Hollow smallmouth are crazy, like you never know what you're gonna get. Like my biggest smallmouth out of that lake was 9.5 pounds. Just an absolute giant, and honestly, it was my first smallmouth I've ever caught in Dale Hollow, and it was absolutely my biggest. I got spoiled the first time I went out, and it was just ever since you're just chasing that. You're always because Dale Hollow holds the 2 biggest smallmouth ever caught on record.
I didn't know that.
Is in Dale Hollow, Tennessee. It's on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. It's a giant lake. It's huge. It's like you can almost never fish the same cove twice if you really wanted to. It's one of those lakes, and and obviously those fish are just anomalies of the whole species, because at that time, it was that lake was experiencing what they refer to now as like New Lake syndrome, and that's like the first 10 years of that lake's life is going to be the most fertile, productive years ever. That's why Antero right now up here in Colorado, every time they drain it, because it's been drained a couple times in its life, every time it's drained, when they fill it back up, it experiences that same thing. As the first 10 years are the most productive growth, most productive fishing. I mean, just absolutely, it's absolutely crazy until they end up restarting all over again, because all the nutrients that are in the soil allows the fish to, and all of the bait fish's food to actually explode. The zooplankton, everything just explodes, and they're able to, you know what I mean? Like it's just the growth is crazy in the first 10 years, but that's why Dale Hall, those two fish, I want to say it was 16 pounds is what the biggest smallmouth out of
Oh my
Dale
God.
Hollow. I want to say that's the record. It was caught in like 1932 or something like that. Crazy long ago. The dude at that time, it was during the Depression, and or the end of it, or the end as such, if I remember right. I can't remember when the Depression actually ended off the top of my head, to be honest. But I do remember that he ate that fish. I'm pretty sure he took it home to his family and they ate the whole damn thing.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Because that's why it's the records of such is so kind of like hit or miss. It's kind of hearsay because of the fact that they ate the son of a gun. You know what I mean? Like it was dinner.
I couldn't even imagine what a 16-pound smallmouth looks like. I'm trying to vision it. Like the biggest one I've caught is maybe 1 or 2 pounds, and I thought that was huge to me. You're saying your first one was 9?
9.5, something like that. We never weighed it, but I've caught lots that are similar, and it just trumps it. Like it looked like it swallowed a football. You know what I mean? It was so fat. This thing was just, I caught it on a little shiner. You know what I mean? I was live bait fishing at that time. I wasn't fishing on, we were just kind of trolling around a spot that my buddy's dad's been fishing this particular side of the lake for like 35 years, and so like him and his buddies have really dialed in some areas, and we were just trolling out some shad and some shiners, and lo and behold, we just get smacked, and it is just an absolute behemoth. Like my biggest bass ever was about 11 and 3/4, 12 pounds, largemouth, in Ohio. And that's pushing close to the record. The record's only 13, so I mean, there's lots of big fish. It just takes years to dial things in and get to that point, Like on that largemouth was caught on a jerk bait. My buddy's friend, one of my friend's family's gravel pits that they own. Just some craziness. I mean, it takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication, But I moved out here, like I said, a few years ago, and started the log home thing doing the log home thing, and eventually my business partner and I started our own log home company. And so we started building log homes, and we restore and finish log homes like all the time. But and then gradually now, I mean, because when I moved to Twin Lakes from Fair, because I originally was living in Fairplay, and then moved to Twin Lakes, and there was no good tackle shops around at all. That's one thing I've noticed about the high country in Colorado. The tackle shops are just not what I'm used to, And so like you go into these places and they may have like maybe 3 or 4 decent, brands of baits, or decent baits that are just kind of universal or quality stuff, but only 3 very slim options, And I was like, dude, I'm tired of paying for garbage. I'm not doing this, Yeah. And lo and behold, I just started just tying my own baits. I was like, dude, I'm not going to pay for garbage anymore. At that time, my skills for tying baits were horrible. I mean, no one taught me how to do it. I just kind of just self-taught myself, to be honest. I mean, I watched a couple of videos online, and then after that, I was just kind of built off of that. Like, to see my early work is just horrifying. It's just like, dude, what was I thinking? And like, and now, I mean, I can't say I'm the greatest of all time by any means, but I mean, I know for a fact that, I mean, that where I started the whole idea of using hair jigs in the first place is Dale Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
We use jigs like this, all the time. That's like, there you go. All the time for big smallmouth, or really, it's kind of like this guy. Really, this would be the deal there.
Okay.
Very, very subtle. But I add a tail to it nowadays to really give some crazy action.
Right. What do you make the tail out of? What's that material?
The tail is actually like a it's like a nylon. I don't make it. It
Okay.
comes pre-made. Like I have a whole shelf full of material right next to me.
Hey,
I'll show you
show it off, man.
yeah. I'll show you what these tails look like.
So
crazy.
growing up in Ohio, fly fishing since you were 4, you didn't think to tie your own flies back then?
I don't think I know, because so here's the thing about being in the city, right? Again, I don't live in the city anymore, and I probably will never again. I just don't like that. And if I have to, it's because I have to and I don't want to. But before I forget, here's the tails.
Okay.
They're pretty cool. You know, they're called dragon tails. They're pretty awesome. But so in Ohio, or in the city in general, you kind of have this at least growing up, right? People kind of had this like throwaway mentality of just like, well, we could always just, I'm just going to go buy cheap stuff, and fish are going to destroy it anyways, you know? But once you're in a place where the supply just isn't there, you know, you start to appreciate quality, you know? So back then I just didn't, like, when I was a kid, it was just like, you know, like, we'll just buy the cheap crap, and it will just be as such, you know. It's not gonna last as long, and that's okay, you know. But my grandfather, he didn't really tie, you know. He was a busy guy. He was working in the hospitals and such, you know. So I don't think it didn't really appeal to him to do that. You know, we would just buy stuff. I'm sure he bought stuff online or other tackle shops, you know. Yeah. But I actually, at that time, probably online shopping probably wasn't even really a thing. Again, I was 4 years old, so I don't really remember. I'm not very old. I'm 26 right now, and so like it was 1998 when when I was 4 years old. So
yeah, we saw dial-up.
Yeah, so online shopping really wasn't that big of a thing by any means at that time, I don't think. So I'm sure that he probably went to a tackle shop and probably found some stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was something that I had tried making baits, but not flies at that time in my life. I think we had, but actually what the first bait I ever made was just like, from what I can remember, was a very odd thing. And what's funny is years later, it became such a crazy big craze through the bass fishing circuit. Is something that I just kind of just made up in my tackle box. And my friends and I were making fun of it in the water, calling it the chandelier lure. It was
umbrella rig. Okay. Well, heck, you're a trendsetter then.
I never heard of this. I never even like messed around with something like this. But I took a bunch of those, you know, like how they make like those spinner bait arms you can clip on jig heads and stuff like that. I had a whole bunch of these things for whatever reason. Like, I had like 30 or 40 of them, and I just started rigging all these crazy things together. And we used to fish this pond of a church. We literally called it the church pond. Like, it was a crazy, awesome little lake, lake, and then the stream that would flow into it is really where we'd fish all the time. We'd catch giants, like just crazy Ohio, like fish that don't see hooks. You know, like, it was the craziest thing in the world. I'd never fished an unpressured body of water before, and so I started throwing this huge conundrum of I called it the chandelier because that's what it was. It wasn't an umbrella. You were getting wet with this thing. It was like, you know what I mean? Like, you're getting wet with this thing, but a chandelier is what it was, man. You would throw that thing out and there's like 40 blades all spinning all over, and the fish just didn't know what to do. Like, they were, you know, and lo and behold, that church, that lake in particular, I remember I caught my first biggest bass. It was so covered wood and everything. We thought this bass was giant that was living underneath this log, but no, it's just the fact that every time we hooked it, it would just go right back underneath this giant log, and then we couldn't move it. You know, yeah. This is what it was. You know, and this place had some of the biggest snapping turtles I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I remember looking across the stream and I'm like, is that a tortoise walking on the ground right now? This thing's, just absolutely stuff that maybe it's because you were so young and you were smaller, so everything seemed bigger, you know, like that could have been it too, you know. But this lake, I just remember catching some of the craziest crappies in my life. Just absolutely the craziest thing ever, some of the craziest bluegills. And you're like, I remember catching fish on mulch. You know what I mean? Literally, I put a hook on a piece of mulch and threw it out and caught a fish. Like the craziest stuff, you know? I mean, but as a kid, you have all that extra time, you know? And growing up in Ohio, as you know, the cicadas.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
when the cicadas.
No, those things are
I
nuts.
said that word when I got huge, you know. Cicadas, man. I mean, some of the craziest fish in your life are during cicada hatches, you know. I remember walking out my dad's front porch and onto our front porch, and our welcome mat was covered in cicadas. And then it was at nighttime, and I turned on the light for the porch, you know, and it shined over the grass on the front yard, and it looked like a wave. And I'm like,
whoa.
Oh my, like what's going on right now? This is like some apocalyptic shit going on right now, you know? And lo and behold, the next morning, my dad's like, who broke a branch off the tree? And I'm like, it's 6 a.m. Nobody, man. Like, what do you mean? And the cicadas had piled so much on this tree that it broke a branch. Just like how many cicadas? That's what I want to know. How many cicadas? Like,
wow,
just a crazy amount. So I remember when that happened, I had this like little 1-gallon plastic fish tank, and I just went out my front yard because there's so many of them. Just
scooped them up,
and there was just filled in there. And the craziest fishing I've ever had in my life. I mean, just because it's like a topwater bait that you do nothing to. You know, it was the craziest week of my life. Like at a certain point. Of fishing wise, you know, at a certain point, I feel like the fish were just like, I'm done with these, man. I don't want to eat another cicada for another 15 years when they come back. Like,
you can see a lot of that around this time. Like I think there's a couple lakes up north where they get a shrimp hatch, and the fish just gorge on those shrimp, and you can't get them to eat anything because they're just like you said. All right, I'm stuffed. I don't need to eat anything.
Exactly. You know, that's one of the hardest things, I think. One of the reasons why. So I fish Twin Lakes a lot because obviously I lived there for 3.5 years. You know,
where is Twin Lakes? Is that on the western side of the mountain?
It's not on the western slope. It's Have you ever heard of the town called Leadville? It's right off It's okay. So I guess it's actually the Arkansas Valley. So if you go, which is kind of hard to describe, to be honest. I mean, you have it's like right in the middle. Like if you look at a map, I mean, you got like Fairplay, the Ark Valley, Western Slope. You know.
Okay.
And so like that's kind of the best way to look at it. You know.
Is it near Granby?
No, Granby's way up north.
Okay, so you're south then. I'm
like almost in the middle of Colorado. Like almost in the very middle, which is it's like a temperate desert over in this area.
Yeah.
Like it's my favorite part, to be honest. Where I live in particular is my favorite part of Colorado, to be honest. But just because I dealt with winter up in Fairplay, and it is up on a mountainside, and I will never want to do it. I like winter, but I don't like that kind of winter where you're just like it was the craziest experience ever. Going from a suburb in Ohio to the mountainside in Fairplay was a crazy change, which I dealt with for a while. It was not a big deal, but I mean, so Twin Lakes has a crazy mysis shrimp problem, and so if you go and fish deeper water for lake trout as such, especially in the wintertime, you're always fighting that. You know, I mean, I remember last year I put my aqua view down, and you couldn't see a few feet in front of the camera because that's how thick the shrimp were.
Oh boy.
You know, just absolutely crazy. If you wanted to catch fish, you went shallow. You know, I mean, you can always catch them deep, but me personally, and I get asked this all the time. It's like, why do you waste all this time deep? You know, especially lake trout or shallow lake trout fishing. You know, and it's like, man, because there's no point of going deep if they're going to be shallow to eat. You know, that's where they go to eat. Go shallow. You know, in my opinion, I want to fish for hungry fish, not fish that are just hanging out.
Big difference.
Exactly. You know. So
moving from Ohio to Colorado, did you have a hard time transitioning your fishing styles, and did you have a hard time catching fish? Because I'm struggling.
So one thing I learned within the first, which is weird because the way that I think about stuff. I think this derives from being on the bass circuit is obvious or instantly adapting to things
Mm-hmm.
and just realizing, because I'm always trying something different, throwing stuff out of the ordinary to see if that's what the bite, to see if they're going to hit it, and then work off of that. I figured this out honestly, I swear to you, my first trip out. So I didn't understand why this was, but I figured this out my first trip. And I was fishing a little stream by where I was living in Fairplay, and Fairplay is phenomenal fishing wherever you are. But I realized that trout don't want you to make it easy. Like they don't like, unless it's like a floating fly, or not floating fly, but a dry, like a dry fly, which is just cruising on the stream.
Right.
They want it to be difficult for them. They like that chase. They like that cat and mouse. So they like, if you can find something that is like an ambush spot, like behind a rock or an eddy or whatever it may be. But if you see that fish following it, don't stop it. Speed it up. It's like if you make it easy,
they don't want it.
They lose interest. They swim away. It's I learned that from a lot of guys, I don't fly fish anymore. I really don't like it. I think it's boring, to be honest. Unless I'm streamer fishing for like muskies or, something or like big browns or whatever it may be, like streamer fishing to me is fun. I don't like dry fly fishing. That stuff bores me to death. I don't like doing it. So like when it comes to like making it, what's the word for it? I guess the cat and mouse game with it, it's just second nature to me anymore. When I see a fish chasing it, like now it's almost hard for me to go back. When I go back bass fishing, it's like it kills me to sit there and make it easy for them, because I know how much cooler it is when you don't.
Now, do you musky fish a lot here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there are some decent musky places around where I'm at, but the area you're in, Twin Lakes, is that a good muskie population there?
Twin Lakes doesn't have any muskies, but there's lakes around us that do. I try to keep my muskie spots on the hush hush as much as I can, because they're just awesome.
I got it.
Other lakes, I don't really care, but some of the lakes I fish, especially in Colorado, we don't have big lakes, So and they're well known. You can look up online which ones are which. But personally, there's so many big musky lakes here in Colorado. You just have to really do some research. Like we use these big bucktails. These are awesome.
Jesus Christ! Do you make those too?
Yeah. This is handmade.
Okay, so back to your, tired of paying for junk stuff. You couldn't find lures like that where you were living?
Not at all. That's another thing. It's supply and demand. There's a high demand for all this stuff here in Colorado. Try to find it. Like I went to Bass Pro Shop, sorry to put them on blast, but I went to Bass Pro Shop to try to find a musky rod. Like, we're not even talking baits. We're not talking reels. I'm just trying to find the basic rod at this point, And I was trying to throw, I don't like using spinning outfits with big baits. I want to use a bait caster,
Right.
And so I found the bait caster that I wanted for the time being, at least, that I could afford. And then I ended up buying, and I wanted an extra heavy because I knew I was going after giant fish. The lakes that I fish, you're looking, some of the lakes that I fish, there's a chance at a state record. That's just what it is. There's a really, really good chance that you may luck into something like that, and they're especially if you're fishing those big fish, high percentage areas, So I went and got an extra heavy rod, or that's what I wanted, was an extra heavy rod, but I couldn't find it. I was like, dude, like, what in the heck? Like, I went to 2 Cabela's and a Bass Pro Shop today. Where can I find this? I figured out that Cabela's, I should have just settled and got the rod at Cabela's because they had a nicer brand, but I ended up having to buy a Bass Pro Shop brand extra heavy, and that was the only one in the whole store. They'd only had one all season. That's the only one I bought. That's the only one I could buy. And This year I tossed out I was making these as a prototype. Like I hadn't even like put these in production yet. And this is obviously these are size 12, mag 12 blades. These are huge, you know.
Yeah, I mean, compared to your hand, I mean, they're
perspective. This is a 5.
holy
You know
cow.
what I mean? And my thought on, especially since I've moved out, since I've started fishing out here, and I used to fish, like I said, on the bass circuit. A lot of times the big fish are caught on stuff that's different, stuff they've never seen before. That's what the old big fish want. Not really want, because they have no idea what they want until they see it. You know, it's that type of thing, you know, like where you have no, like they would have never saw something like that in a million years, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they've had so many crankbaits and swim baits thrown at them. They know what they are.
Exactly. You know, and there's a good chance they could have gotten caught by one. You know, or I mean, because yet again, I'm a firm believer that maybe a fish doesn't have a crazy big memory, but a traumatic experience like getting hooked is something that especially an old fish, like let's say a muskie or a lake trout, will never really forget. It may not remember exactly what happens, but it's a traumatic event. You know what I mean? Like imagine if that happened to you, you know,
Right.
in my, like you bite into a cheeseburger and you get towed up into space.
That would happen to me because I would probably see a cheeseburger in the water and be like, oh, that looks yummy. Chomp.
Exactly, you know, but yeah, I mean, obviously that's an extreme spectrum of it, but that's kind of the thought process behind it, you know. So my thought is I just want to make stuff that is absolutely kind of out of the ordinary, you know, and to put you ahead of the curve, you know, like this is a newer style that's became kind of popular by a company called Mayhem. I think Mayhem Tackle or something. Mayhem Muskies or Muskie Mayhem. Yeah, it's Muskie Mayhem.
Okay.
Where they do this. They put 2 on the bottom where they put their hook. One of their hooks, and then they also actually would make this a little bit longer, and they put a hook here, but that way you have 4 blades.
Whoa.
And so this right here actually is streamer hair. So no company that I can find use streamer hair like I do with all of my baits, all my musky baits. Excuse me. It's really I do a lot of layering with all my baits. Like this is streamer hair, this is Flashaboo, and then we got our bucktail.
Okay.
And when that flows through the water, man, like, so I caught a fish I got my personal best muskie last year, which is not a giant. I've only caught 2 muskies in my entire life. So,
Really?
three. One through the little guy through the ice. And then I got one. Last year was the year of the muskie for me personally. I finally got my boat out, things like that. And I mean, I caught a muskie that was casting. I got about 24 inches, not a very big one. And then I caught one later on that year on a kokanee colored of this, just white and blue version of this.
Okay.
And it was the first one I've ever made. And it didn't see water for longer than 2 minutes.
Really?
We were trolling around. We pulled up onto the point that I know that is a good spot, and I was like, I threw out my bucktail, let it sink, set it up, put it in the rod holder, and was just trolling on my, with my boat, and was like, I just was going as fast as it could take me, because I know with July muskies, I mean, it's as fast as you can take it, they'll hit it. I mean, hell, I could be going 2-3 miles an hour and that will trigger a bite, so they can move really quick, and
Right.
lo and behold, that fish was 38 inches, something like that. It was a solid fish, but I will still never forget. Like, so that fish, I saw my rod go like this a couple times because I was hitting rocks. I was grinding rocks with a bucktail, which is odd. Most people don't do that. But that's exactly what I was doing. Sorry, I'm plugging in my laptop here. But so lo and behold, it just doubled over. And my I only have like a 10-foot 10-foot aluminum John boat, and I'm with my friend Jet. I'm with my friend, and he's much bigger than I am, like just a bigger person. And so like we're a pretty good weight. We're like 500 pounds, and it just tows us sideways for a second. We're just like, oh my God, what did we hook up here? And like first, like I didn't believe that it was a fish. I thought we were snagged on a rock. Almost every big fish I've ever caught, I thought it was snagged. almost every single one. I thought for sure, because it's in your mind, you're like, this is, I've spent hours not catching big fish. Why would it happen right now?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it did. I see this thing jump like 6 feet out of the water. It was crazy. I mean, it was insane. It jumped out of the water, and all you hear is these blades smacking together as hard as, I mean, it was insane. And mind you, it's not like I have a really nice muskie rod. My muskie rod's a Bass Pro Shop pull stick. That thing's a 7-foot extra heavy, and it's doubled over. It's just going crazy. Lo and behold, we get this fish in, and it's the most beautiful fish I think I've ever caught. I mean, I've caught some big lake trout, and I've caught some big. I've caught a lot of big fish in my life, but not especially freshwater. We've never done any saltwater. But that was probably takes the cake. That tiger muskie was the most beautiful fish I think I've ever hooked in my life. That was, my biggest, brown trout was like 28 inches, but it doesn't matter. I spent 3 summers fishing for that one fish,
every second.
Oh yeah. It took me 3 summers. Like, I've never worked so hard for a trophy fish, and that's not even nowhere near the biggest fish in that lake, nowhere near.
Yeah.
Because a week earlier than that, we hooked into a fish, and because we're going back to the boat ramp before it closed, and I'm a trolling motor on high, and my friend throws out this little crankbait behind us. Lo and behold, we hook a fish that's just towing us backwards while we were on full blast with the trolling motor. It didn't turn us sideways, nothing. We never saw the fish. It didn't jump, didn't do anything. We ended up throwing the fish. He ended up throwing the hook. But, lo and behold, this was just an absolute crazy time. I had never experienced hooking up to a fish, and the boat it felt like Jaws. You're going back, it's towing me backwards. I had never experienced. Like I said, I've hooked into some big lake trout. I've hooked in, and apparently big lake trout have more horsepower than almost any other fish. But I don't know, man. That was the craziest thing yet again, I've never hooked into a 40+ inch lake trout. I've never hooked into something over 40, so I have no idea what that's like. But it's just absolutely insane. The crazy stuff you see: muskie fishing, pike fishing. I've gotten really big into pike fishing in the last year or two, along with muskies. That day in particular, when I hooked my 38, we went pike fishing at Spinney first thing in the morning. And then I told my buddy, I was like, it's like 2:00. I was like, let's go home. We're going to recharge, get a sandwich, and head back out and go fishing at this other lake this evening. And we had done good at Spinney that morning. I then went to this other lake for the evening. And it was an absolute unbelievable day. Hitting 2 different bodies of water. That's one reason why I love living in this area, is because for a fisherman's standpoint, you can go and do completely different things 40 miles down the road.
Oh, for sure.
And that's the beautiful thing about it. You can, there's been days where I went ice fishing in the morning, I went river fishing in the afternoon, and then I went and hit the ice again in the evening. 3 different places. It's crazy how that works. Or go fish open water in the evening, or whatever it may be. It's just a crazy, crazy experience. Colorado is a beautiful place, and it's not the best place in the world. There's always somewhere else. There's always another place. I don't believe this place is going to be my forever home, but I do believe that, for the people that really respect and appreciate it, it's everything. It's damn near close to paradise,
Oh yeah.
But the thing is too, you get what you pay for. It's a very expensive place to live. I live in a relatively cheap place compared to a lot of parts of Colorado. I can't imagine. I remember one time I was going through, when I was trying to start our log home business, I was going door knocking, basically, as they call it. That's how I started both businesses. Is just literally just going to doors, knocking, that type of thing. Which is sometimes the best way to start.
Sure.
I had no money. I had $5 in my pocket, but I had more, and a little bit more just to cover bills in the bank. And I was driving to Aspen, and I remember stopping at a gas station, was just like, dude, I am so thirsty. I was like, I packed a sandwich, but I forgot a drink. I was like, I am so thirsty. What's the cheapest thing I could think of that like for most for your money on that one? I was like, I really don't want water right now, honestly. I was like, I kind of want like an Arizona tea. I was like, that should be like 99 cents. You know, it says so on the can, right?
Yeah.
No, that was a $4 can of Arizona iced tea. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. It says right here. What do you mean, dude? I was like, he was like, well, I'm sorry, man, because you're in Aspen. And I'm like, dude, I have $5. He just took like almost everything. I was like, and it was whatever. And I was like, well, I got my drink. And I was like, that's the cheapest thing I could find in this town. That is insane to me. You know, I understand supply and demand, but like, come on, man. Like, we're going to go 4 times on this, you know, whatever. Way she goes. And that was just insane to me. But I mean, that's Aspen. That's just what it is, you know. Like that's ski towns, you know. Because in between of when we first started the business, you know, like the log home business, we did it at a really bad time of the year because my old boss and I just didn't get along, and we ended up parting ways. And but we did that in October, so right before winter time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, that's a horrible time to try to start a log home business is in October, you know. So I ended up just having to go clean houses in Breckenridge for a year, you know, for a winter, you know, because I realized I was like, no way, they're paying that much to hang out and just clean houses in Breckenridge. Like, count me in. At that time, and it's more flooded nowadays. At that time, they were paying like $35-$40 an hour, and you could go and, you know, get as many tips as you wanted, all the beer you could find, you know, all the food you could find, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy cow! Like, I could pay my bills on this. I promise. I'll do that. I was like, for how much to scrub toilets? Yeah, I'll do that. That's for sure. You know.
Absolutely. So you got the log home business going. You're starting to make your own lures because you're tired of paying for crap. How did it go from just making your own lures because you were sick of not having anything to making that into cougar baits?
Any addiction. So you got to think about this, right? Every addiction out there, well, as soon as you have it of making baits, you're going to try to think of a way to make baits so to lower your cost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can sell some, you know, and on top of that, you're thinking, in my mind, I'm also thinking like, it's not just me that likes these things, you know, and like, right, no one's going to give me a chance until they're tested, you know. So I started giving them to friends, and then they started buying them like crazy, you know. And then they were like, dude, you have to start going to door to door to try to sell these things because, you know, it could be bigger than you one day. You have no idea, you know. And it's nowhere near that big yet by any means. But I end up going to a little place called Saturday's Discount in Leadville. It's a gas station, but it's also a liquor store and gun store and tackle shop and gas. It's an all-in-one store. It's awesome. They're
made
cool
you feel like you were back in Ohio.
Yeah. It was an awesome little store, and it's still there today. I mean, I go there all the time, and they still carry my baits, you know. That was the thing, is that they gave me a chance, you know. They were like, yeah, for sure, you're locally made, you live right down the street, so all these are tested to the lakes that we fish all around here, so yeah, for sure we'll carry them in there. But I think too, what started before that, though, because I completely forgot a whole part of that, and that was this old man that worked there. He was running the gun store area, but he had been the Mount Massive fish hatcher for 30 some odd years. And I got to talking with him, and he was like, yeah, I used to tie my own flies. My buddy and I bought a fly shop out years ago, but we never started it. He's like, we bought the shop, and then we realized that we couldn't, but bills came in faster than what we could handle, that type of thing. He's like, we ended up having to just go back to work at the mine. And then until I started working at the Mount Massive Estates. He's like, so that was years ago, back in the 80s, you know? And he was like, you wouldn't be interested in any material, would you? And I was like, yeah.
Of course I would.
Yeah, for sure I would, man. And he was like, oh, dude, okay, well, come in here tomorrow. I'll bring you like a couple shoe boxes full of stuff. And I was like, hell yeah, for sure. Count me in, you know? And I still have it. Honestly, I haven't really tied much with it because I don't use peacock feathers that much. But like,
Yeah.
but in pheasant feathers. But he gave me all sorts of material, and nicest old man in the world. But he had sold flies before in the past too, and but back in the day, and so basically I just kept on coming in there and asking him his opinion on them. I was like, how can I perfect these? How can I make them bulletproof?
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. They're trying to troubleshoot my rookiness, in a sense. You know what I mean? Yep. My innocence or ignorance in the trade. And so he eventually, showed me, kind of showed me the ropes in a sense. He didn't I never sat down with him and tied, but he just kind of gave me pointers, and I would go home and I would work on it for a few hours. And then, at that time, it was in the winter time, I wasn't really working, so I was like, I had a lot of time to kill. And so I was, just tying baits. And eventually he was like, dude, I would love to carry these in the store. So we start talking with the owner, things like that. And lo and behold, they were in there, and that was like a couple years ago, a couple winters ago, we had actually pulled the trigger on them. And I mean, my company's really young. I mean, I've only been around for like a year and a half.
Right.
It's a very, very, very young company at the time, especially right now, even such, it's still a very young company. I mean, and I will say that, I mean, if it wasn't for that guy, I probably wouldn't be where I'm at right now. That's just what it is. You have to give credit where it's due. And those people, they believed in me, which is remarkable. Honestly, I'm just some guy tying baits in my house. Like, I'm not like, this is my room. Right. Like, because, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm in some fancy place or I can't believe it. And going from an angler to somebody who is now, on the brink of being, completely saying a complete commercial tire, which I am. I make baits for a small stores, and now going to be a big store that's going to be coming here in March.
Are you allowed to say what store that is yet?
What?
Are you allowed to say what store that is yet?
I
know you were kind of like,
yeah. I mean, I guess I'll say it. I mean, the paperwork's being finalized, so.
I mean, let's face it. There's one person watching this live stream right now, so I think you're good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to be. I'm sure I'll get posted and stuff later on if that's how that works.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Shields. So.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, over in Colorado Springs, the new one in the Springs.
Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, because it was, and to get to that point, it took a while. A lot of. And I was live streaming 3 nights a week. I was going to all these fishing tournaments, selling baits, vending, thinking about how to bring my product to people,
making the contacts and putting in the effort. And
you have to do that. If you don't do that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot, man. Like, you're wasting your time. Like, that's in my perspective. And if you're ever thinking about upsizing your business from you doing all the work or just you being the only dude working, if you ever want to try to upscale things, you can't just not put yourself out there. I learned that with my log home business. Like, it took us forever to get our name out there, and now we're one of the most well-known log home restoration guys in the whole valley and of most of Colorado. Like, there's a couple of people that are have bigger companies, but they don't have as good of a reputation. It's that type of thing, and you just have, I'm a firm believer in, I don't care what it costs, but I want it to be the best. Like, sure. I know that sounds, snobby or whatever it may be, but when it comes to lures, right? You're in the middle of the lake. That's where's the nearest tackle shop? Do you want to stop what you're doing? That bite's going to end in 20 minutes. You just lost your bait on a rock or whatever it may be, or got beat up. So, like, hair. That's the bait. I think that's one of the things that really made me want to make these baits bomb proof, because in the beginning they were just disposable, but I used to fish a lot of hair jigs for smallmouth in Tennessee, and they would just fall apart after 4 or 5 fish. The
Mhm.
heads would get smashed up. Punisher Lures is the company we used to buy them from, and I think they've gotten bought out in a sense. I want to say so, but they didn't put any epoxy over the heads. There was one knot holding the whole thing together,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's no glue, nothing. It was just thread on a hook, It was bare bones, But there were $3 a piece, and most people are thinking, well, $3 a piece, then I'll go buy for 6 of those. Well, the one thing you have to think about, and this is a very minute way. So there's a guy that's on the bass circuit that used to fish in the bass club that um, I used to fish in. His name's Jacob Wheeler. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but
I think so.
yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a pretty big name nowadays in the bass fishing world. He fished in it about a year before I joined, and I saw when he was talking about hair jigs, and not just hair jigs, because when he actually designs baits for for the Guggen baits. Have you ever heard of
Okay.
him?
Yeah.
And so the reason why the Guggen baits was one of the first companies to make the plastic inserts, right?
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, where they put the worms all together and
Yes.
it's like all in a straight line. There's a reason behind that. It's not just for shipping, kind of for shipping, but there's a reason why they do that, and that's because that way everything is picture perfect. Because let's say you ship those in a box, a little arm gets kinked. Well, that's never going to flow right ever again. Like it's never going to work like it should, and so therefore it's not. And they've noted, and him and a lot of his guys on the bass circuit were all just like, they have to figure out a way to make these perfect, because if we design them a certain way for a reason, there's a reason why we have all these bags of baits that are only half empty, because we're not using the other ones. They're garbage to us.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because money's on the line. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to. That's how they make their living. So it has to be absolutely dialed in perfect. And that's the same reason what my thought behind making a bait that lasts longer is because, yeah, I could buy 5 other baits for this, or like not 5, but 2 or 3 other baits for the same cost as this one, but every one of those is different.
And that one's going to last as long or longer than your 2 or 3 other ones. So that bucktail jig you're holding, is that one of the ones you proposed, like you showed to the original people that started carrying your lures?
No.
What was the first one? Okay, so while you're thinking about that, how many different types of lures are you making now as far as designs?
So many, man.
Really?
Honestly, I have no idea. We're looking at, if you're talking weights, patterns, I mean, types of material, the combinations are almost endless.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at now I'm trying to narrow them down as a lot more. But you're looking at, it could be literally upwards to well over 100, maybe 130, 140. I mean, there's so many options that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to me, because that jig that I showed you, that's not a bucktail. That's the thing. It's like I can make this in a bucktail, but that's not bucktail. That's a craft fur. Craft fur is one of the most durable. It's a synthetic material. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure it's a synthetic.
Yes.
And it is the most beautiful flowing material for hair jigs. That's what Punisher used years ago when they first started using it, was craft fur. And once I found that out, because I actually called them up at one point in time, was just trying to kind of pick their brain on it.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't going to tell me much information because they don't want me to steal I wasn't trying to steal their design.
Right.
I was just trying to make, because we could go to Dale Hollow. I'm just trying to make baits for my buddies and make them better, and they didn't want that. Obviously, they don't want that competition, and I completely understand why. But no harm, no foul, just to give them a call and see what I could find out,
Sure.
Because at first I was making them out of. I was trying to make this jig, right? Well, originally I tried making a bucktail or marabou, and then bucktail, and then I tried the streamer hair, and then I found out that it was craft fur, Now, the biggest problem is that a lot of these fly shops, they don't carry big amounts of streamer hair. They don't carry any craft fur unless you go to like a Cabela's, which I don't live anywhere near a Cabela's. And so I didn't have a chance to put my hands on any of this stuff. Like nobody would order stuff for me. It was a very like struggle to even get materials, you know. Eventually I finally found a tackle shop that was just opening, you know, and they were like, yeah, I'll order. They wanted me to, originally they wanted me to be a guide for them, you know, and I was like, yeah, that'd be cool, but I'm not really trying to sell these baits, things like that. And he was like, well, I'll order everything you want from Wapsi. Just give me a list. Here's a catalog, you know, and I wrote down everything I wanted. And a lot of it was just trial and error stuff. I still do that today because Wapsi is really bad about having pictures. I don't understand why, you know, like why they don't put pictures in their catalog. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But probably for idiots like me that don't know what some things are. So you just buy it and then are like, oh yeah, I like that. Now I have to save. Now I have to put that on the list for the next order. You know, like It's that type of thing because I mean, coming from a background of bass fishing, you're buying almost all of your baits. You don't know what all these materials are. And so like, I mean, craft fur was just something I stumbled upon, you know, at that point. Like it was, and once I figured out exactly what it was, I was like, dude, this is the goal. This is awesome. You know, it lasts forever. I mean, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot about like, but I mean, I know that like I make a black hair jig. I'll go grab it in a second. Yeah. I've been doing a bunch of organizing today. But here's a big version of what I'm talking about. It's just one of my most popular baits sold. It's the leech lure. I sell them like nobody's business. This one's a little bit heavier. This is the 1/4 ounce, but it's a very simple bait, just straight black. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Phenomenal for Colorado fishing. But this bait in particular, like I had a 1/8 ounce that I used for the last 3 winters. Still tied onto my rod right now. I have over 400 fish on that one bait.
Jeez. Well, now see, you're shooting yourself in the foot a little bit because you got to make people buy more of them. You can't just make an indestructible lure.
The thing is, though, is most people don't store them properly.
Oh, okay.
So, which sucks for them. I wish that most people knew better, but they don't. Well, they don't care. They're like, most people are used to being disappointed with baits, which is a weird thing that the tackle industries have created and that people are just okay with.
Yeah.
And, and I mean, so if you kink this and let it stay kinked for an whole winter, it may not go back and flow exactly the same again. But if you keep it like that for a couple of weeks, it usually will be just fine. Okay. You know, like craft fur is a beautiful thing, you know, and it's phenomenal for hole hopping because it doesn't hold that much water. Yeah. So like, because it's a synthetic. So when you're hole hopping in the wintertime ice fishing, all you gotta do is put it in your hand for just a couple seconds. And even in -50 when I was out hole hopping, like it was, I mean, I fished those days, believe it or not, but like I was out and I'll hole hop a little bit, but on those days, but most of the time I'm just hanging out in my hut. Believe it or not, those are the most productive days of the year.
The coldest day?
Always go out on the record low days. Always. Now I brave the weather, bundle up, do whatever you got to do. I hang out in my hut most of the time. But
the last time I braved the weather, my neighbor's ice fishing hut got ripped off the ice and went flying about a mile off the lake.
Was it not strapped down? And
no, it had 6 ice screws in it.
Holy cow.
The tie downs actually ripped off from the hut. That's what happened. Yep.
I know what happened. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I know what happened. So you guys attached because a lot of times for the hub style, the pop outs, they have like these little like fabric handles that are attached to metal, and people go and attach that to the fabric instead of attaching it to the metal loop that hooks to the hub.
Oh no, we attached it to the metal.
Really?
The whole tab, like the actual tab, was stuck to his ice screw. Yeah. We were just fishing, having a good old time. Next thing I know, he's on his face, looking down the hole, and I'm about ready to fall backwards, and all of our ice fishing stuff, our hut, just goes flying off into oblivion.
That's some Wizard of Oz stuff, man, where the house just flies everywhere, you know. But that's like I've experienced 50-mile-an-hour winds out there, you know, and I yeah, it's a little sketchy, but like what I've had to do is I've actually had to take 2 stakes to one, you know, 2 ropes going to one spot. But in that case, that wouldn't have mattered. That just means the hut failed, you know. That's all that was, you know. I don't trust Eskimo anymore. I've had a lot of bad experiences with Eskimos. I'm not a fan of my Cabela's hut. I'm buying an Otter next time. That's for sure. But regardless, I mean, we're going back to the actual baits themselves, you know, like I think the big thing is innovation, you know, when it comes to trying to get yourself into a market like we have here in Colorado. You know, like I said before, I just don't believe that we have, especially Colorado companies making these baits in particular. I just think a lot of people are dead set on making things as cheaply as possible, and they think that that's going to sell to try to compete with Chinese companies. And like, I don't think they understand that Americans are kind of sick and tired of Chinese companies, and so like I really don't care about how much they cost. Like I'm going to do the absolutely best I can to make them as bulletproof as possible. And you're going to buy more because they work. It's not because they're going to fall apart and you're going to be like, well, damn, dude, that thing broke. Like, no, it's because they catch fish day in and day out. You know, like that's the reason why I have like, let's put this perspective. Right before Christmas, I had 4 pages of orders. I mean, handwritten, like pages of orders right before Christmas, you know, like people buy them because their friends caught fish on them and then they told them about them. And then they watch my live stream here a couple times a week, and they see how much time and attention to detail I have to pay towards every bait to make them, you know, as awesome as possible. But, and they've seen me doing this for the last few years, you know, and so they know that, you know, I even in the summertime, I'm making ice fishing lures because I know that out of nowhere, I'm just going to get a huge order, you know, or they know that I'm trying to perfect things, you know. And last year, I mean, I've broken to new markets, you know, like I'm doing the musky baits. I'm doing the pike and bass spinner baits as well. Okay. I'm also doing like these 2-ounce musky baits that I don't really like using. I casted these around quite a bit. The biggest problem with, I send a lot of these up to Canada. A lot of my big spinner baits, they go up north, up to Canada. But the big thing is the fact that up in those lakes, you will be fishing those deeper weeds and such. A lot of our deep weeds, like this 2-ounce bait's only, in my perspective, I really only use this bait maybe 4 days out of the whole summer. You know, when I'm fishing those really deep hydrilla weeds and stuff like that at Spinney, right? That's what I throw. I've had some crazy action on these things. I normally do like a tandem, where like I'll do my trailer hook, but then tie a whole nother fly or lure onto the back, you know. So it's literally like this long. Right. You know, and then I'll put my big blades on there. I'll put some big fluted Indianas or something. And I've almost had my rod taken out of my hands so many times. I've yet to catch a giant out of Spinney. My biggest one's 32 out of Spinney, biggest pike. But I mean, my biggest ever was 37.5 up at Elkhead Reservoir. But Spinney is a very special place for a lot of people, you know. Sure. And spinner baits I really want. That's something that kind of took me back to my roots of bass fishing, and so I think that's why I love it so much. Is I'm getting to cast baits that I've perfected in a way. Like I know what ones I want to throw, and I know what modifications I've made. In
You broke up a little bit. I can't hear you if you're talking. Well, there we go.
Sorry there, man.
It's all right.
Every now and again, it's so weird. Every now and again, my computer will just be like, "What? You didn't want to use the internet anymore?" Hey, what
you've had enough for the day.
But I don't know. I just think when you make the leap from an angler to a lure maker, commercial fly tire, like you were kind of talking about me or talking to me about, mm-hmm. It's a weird thing because you have to find that medium between obviously you don't want to make everything completely bomb proof because it would be completely non-profitable. Not necessarily like people won't come back, because that's not true. They will. I mean, but you would have to charge such an outrageous amount of money that like nobody would buy them. It's just because they wouldn't. To get someone who has not used that bait before to actually believe it in you, mm-hmm. It's almost impossible. Like to get new buyers is very difficult. They have to hear from a friend. They have to see footage. Because I think what ruined it for small businesses is companies like the Banjo Minnow. I'm sure you've heard of the Banjo Minnow.
Everybody has.
And so many other gimmicky, crappy lures like them. Yep. I'm sure you remember the lure called Laser Lure.
Yep.
Where they put a freaking laser pointer in the front of them.
I remember.
I caught a bass on one time. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't think it was in the muddiest, crappiest water. There's no way that did anything. No way. But I just don't think that. I think that kind of really put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths for trying new things, because in a sense, because they feel like they're just throwing their money away. But once they see others doing it and they see, testimonials, things like that. And when I go to these shows to talk and explain all the work that I put into them, a lot of people are like, okay, I'm cool with that. Yeah. I'll definitely give them a shot, Like last year for the Twin Lakes tournament, because Twin Lakes does an ice fishing derby every year. I don't know if you've ever heard if you know that or not.
Yes.
Obviously not this year because of COVID, things like that. If they really wanted, they could have done it, but they didn't want to do all the crazy stuff. They're just like, "Oh, wait this one out." And so my baits took first, third, and fifth.
Really? Oh, that's impressive.
You know what I mean? As far as and there were all people that. Well, one of them was my good friend Ed. I put him on fish, and I gave him a lure, and I was like, "Dude, you're gonna catch fish here." He's never caught a big lake trout in his life. Mm-hmm. And he ended up catching one that was 35 inches, a nice one. Not a giant. Didn't take first. But it was he got fifth place, and then I sold baits to this one guy who was he came over and was drinking beer with us because I was being a food vendor too. Uh-huh. I was selling pulled pork sandwiches and all sorts of other stuff too. And we're sitting there eating pulled pork sandwiches, drinking beer, talking for a few hours, and lo and behold, he's like, "Man, I really need to get my son on some fish." And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, I need to get him on some fish. I want to get him into ice fishing, that type of thing. And I was like, "You know what, man?" Because we kept on joking, and he thought we were joking, but we were kind of joking, but kind of like being serious, because he kept on saying, "What's going to win the tournament? What's going to win the tournament?" I'm like, "Dude, the bait I'm making right now, the bait that's right here, I haven't made anything like it except because the reason why I don't have any others is I lost it in a fish's mouth. He broke me off. Like, I know that it's an underspin. I'll say, So I'm I assume you know what an underspin is.
Roadrunner is my favorite underspin. That's
Cougar baits are about to be your new favorite. I made a rainbow trout version.
okay.
And this one is my brand new. Just got these heads in yesterday.
Uh-huh.
The 2 tones, but the guy obviously the hammered blade, but it was a rainbow trout color. This one actually has ostrich hurl in it, ostrich feathers, and flash blue at the same time.
Okay.
And so he casted one of those down, and I gave him some pointers on where to go, things like that. Actually, before I forget, these actually have Gamakatsu hooks as well.
Okay.
But so they're really strong. But lo and behold, his son ended up getting third, I want to say, if I remember right. And he was just like, because of the way that lake is structured, if you're right up next to some rocks or something, it echoes from forever away. And apparently, like from all these huts, like almost halfway throughout the lake, were just like all they could hear was cougar baits being yelled as loud as possible, because this kid was just like, I cannot believe this. This is insane.
That's fun.
Just crazy stuff, and it just underspins, man. This is something I think that a lot of people are over. Like, this is like, if there's a slept on bait, that's it right there.
100%.
That's a bait through the ice that people don't think or don't utilize. It's something that really originated, from what I could tell, or got really popular in the smallmouth bass fishing circuit. When people were fishing for smallmouth, fishing over little weed beds, things like that, smallmouth crush them, big pike crush them. But ice fishing is a whole different ball game, because it actually, instead of it just being a blade, this turns into like a spoon, and it's flashing all over the place. I call this thing my fish collar, because that's what happens, especially early ice. We went to Antero, my friend Ed and I casted one down. I'm jigging, and he had just like this little tungsten on with a little mealworm, and I'm just like, Ed, put on a cougar bait. What are you doing right now? And he's like, oh, I'm just putting a tungsten on. I'll put this thing on later. I was like, okay, man, whatever do you. Cast this thing down. Lo and behold, like 3 fish come into this thing trying to smash it, and they kept on hitting the spoon, everything else, and they hit his tungsten. And he caught, mind you, like 7 or 8 fish doing this.
Right.
He was playing the switcheroo right next to me. And it was just calling him in from a distance. That same day, we got broke off by a big old muskie. I got crazy things happening, and then once Twin Lakes finally froze up, at least to the area that I wanted to fish was finally starting to freeze up, which is insane, because it's normally the first. It normally freezes up first, but because of the water pumping and everything, they pumped out 12 feet this year.
Oh, geez.
It's all my shallow water spots are destroyed. I can't even fish them. It's not even worth it. I had to find new spots. Whatever, away she goes. But we fished this spot that was right next to where I was trying to fish, and I was looking on my aqua view, and I looked at my friend. And I was like, "Those rainbows just scattered. Get your bait down there right now," and because that's what happens. You fish, find the bait fish, and then you find the Lakers. And I saw this, all these rainbows just scatter. And I had this thing down there, and I was just kind of jigging it, and I made sure to rip it real hard, make it look like and then I came down and was just kind of shaking it, and I literally saw the shadow come in, and it felt like 90 miles an hour, just came in, and then just doubled back and smashed my lure. Like with it, he said, you know what, I don't want a real rainbow trout anymore, because that's more realistic, or that's easier to catch. Like, he was chasing real fish, and we're just like, I'm eating that thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have sucker meat on there. I don't normally tip my baits. I know lots of my friends do. I personally don't. I'm sure you've probably seen, and they don't work just, thing about hair jigs is they work all over the world, That's another thing too. It's like, it's a universal bait. So it's kind of a cool business plan because of the people that actually do use your baits. I'm sure you've seen the guy Clayton Schick up in Saskatchewan, but on YouTube, he uses my baits a lot. He said, he's like, man, I've been catching fish on your baits. He's like, but I'm not going to make a post until it's over 40. He wants a big fish on there. He said it's made a plan that he wants a big fish on them this year. So we're waiting to see. We're crossing our fingers, hoping he gets a big one. I want to see it. I want to see. The thing is, I keep on hearing about all these giant fish that are being caught on my baits, but nobody sends me pictures. And it's like, dude, I just want to see it.
You need those.
I mean, I've told the thing for the people that are watching this, I give discounts for pictures. Okay. I do, man. I like, especially if I always try to tell people keep the lure in the mouth for just a second, man. Just if you can keep the lure in the mouth, get a picture of it. I will give you baits and I cut a little bit, like an extra bait or two, or I'll give you a discount on your bait on your order, depending on how big it is. It's just something that really helps out, man. It's the testimonial deal. It's the turning the potential customers to customers is pictures like that.
Yeah.
And the thing I think is too is like what I've noticed is that a lot of people just ask me, like, here, I have my budget $60 or $80, whatever it is, pick out a variety pack for me.
Oh, they trust you that much.
And it's just like, man, like it's a very hard thing to do because you're just like, I don't know what your style is. I don't know where you're fishing. I don't know who you are. It's like asking someone where should I eat tonight?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's something that if you do those things for people, and it pays off, they're just blown away. They're just like, how does this guy go and, I tell him where I fish, and then he just sends me a package that's catered to those areas. How?
Yeah.
It's crazy. What I was trying to get started was I was trying to do like a tackle box, and have that thing filled up,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would just fill up a tackle box with the baits for like Christmas or something. I ended up not going forth with it because the price of tackle boxes are crazy. I don't know if you've looked at because you need a big streamer box is what you need for hair jigs.
Yes.
I bought a streamer box reluctantly off of Amazon last year, and a negative 30-day killed it.
Really?
Yep. It blew up. It was like, I threw it in. I just kind of like tossed it into my sled, and I didn't have anything in the bottom of the sled, and it just shattered to a million pieces. And you're like, "Are you serious, man?" And so I wanted to get. I think it's MFG, as they're called. If I want to say, it's like made in Montana, but they're like $80 a box, and it's pretty steep. But is it going to last? That's the thing. Is like the price doesn't matter if it lasts. If you can afford it, just do it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what that is, they're wonderful. I mean, in Colorado, we're a land of extremes, and like I said, I fished those negative 50 days. Both times I fished negative 50 days, I have had some of the craziest experiences ever. I mean, for example, the last one I fished, which was earlier this year, you're always going to have some type of malfunctions happen, whether it be fishing, your truck, whatever it may be. Something's going to go wrong. It's going to put a little wrench in the day, but you'll get through it, Lo and behold, it took me like an hour and a half to get my heater started, And I was all bundled up. I had my climate suit on, everything, got Sorel boots, nice wool socks, everything, warm socks. And I started, like, my feet were getting cold, and I'm like, dude, I'm an hour in right now, like, excuse me. I was like, I'm starting to worry, like I don't want to get frostbite. Like, it's negative 50 outside. Like, it's crazy, I was like, my ice hut's insulated, but it's only insulated to the cold right now. Like, it's only worse in here almost,
Right.
And I missed like 10 fish that morning trying to get this thing started. The fish were stupid active. I mean, they were just coming in and just smashing it I was just dead sticking while I was, I had one rod in the water, and I'm so happy I didn't catch a fish, because if I would have caught a fish, I would have lost my fingers. You know what I mean? Like, I would like my hands would have been soaked and just been done, and lo and behold, I ended up not happening. Obviously, I get started I end up having to take a Bic lighter and heating up all the regulators and everything on my buddy heater. And
it was that cold. Just had your buddy heater messed up.
The thing was that I learned my lesson the year before, and I still didn't even like learn my lesson, because the year before I did the same thing. And so when it's that cold, you keep all of your
Nope, your computer said no more internet.
This is insane. So, sorry about that, man.
No, you're fine.
For whatever reason, when it's that cold, you keep all your batteries, all your propane, all your bait, all your food, all and your water, things like that in your truck until you get out of the car. Until you get out.
Yes.
And I don't use gas augers. I'm all electric. I have a Strike Master. So I keep all your batteries, all that stuff in the truck. And I mean, I get to my spot on Antero is only like a quarter mile. Like it's not even that far.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk out that way. And so mind you, I had, really warm everything. I had my propane heaters or tanks on the floorboards of my truck getting warm. And they're almost hot, really, And so by the time I got to the hut, set up and everything, which wasn't that crazy long, I mean, nothing would work. I mean, it's just not. Everything was frozen. My batteries died like midway throughout the day. Like everything was just done. I mean, when that cold, the year before, it was even crazier, honestly, because I didn't expect it. Now I know what to expect in that cold weather. Yeah. But I got out there to my spot. I had 2 inches of ice off my beard. You know what I mean? Like everywhere. I was frozen. But I was motivated to get fishing.
Right.
And, like I said, it was an insane day. I saw a muskie come in, nose at my bait. First time I ever saw it on camera. It was crazy. And then this fish comes back later on that afternoon, like hot, like trying to kill my bait, and it was a sucker fish version of this,
Uh-huh.
And I jigged it up because I was like, I have to keep doing what made him come in, I can't make it easy for him like a pike, you gotta just make him pissed. You have to really get this fish mad, and so I started taking it away from him, and then I jigged it downward, and the hook caught his fin.
Oh no!
And I'm like, you kidding me? And he just gets spooked off and then hangs out, like looking at the camera, and then swims off. And then later on that afternoon, I'm throwing an underspin, the same color.
Uh-huh.
And it's coming about noon. I know I had to go fill a bunch of orders, and I'm like, I have to just go. And so I start packing up, and I start to clear out my holes, to make, because I'm a firm believer in looking down my hole before and slowly reeling up before I leave. Like never just rip your rod out of the hole. That's just a bad idea. You never know, anything could happen. It's happened to me so many times that like it's now habit to me. I can't not do this. So I'm looking down my hole, and I see this fish that's easily close to 40 inches, a big muskie, come up and just
chomp
and set the hook, and he threw me instantly. Like it was just like,
come on.
I felt just 2 huge head shakes, and that was it, man. Just done. And like I said, those extreme days, you have to brave the weather, and yeah, I mean, some of the best muskie days out there that you'll find are right after a big crazy storm, like it's the way that those fish react to weather is insane. We also had a full moon like that week, so like the moon phases were helping out too. Like it was craziness, and it was relatively early ice. I mean, there were so many factors,
Yeah.
I mean, we had a very scary experience with one of my friends earlier this year at Antero. He went through, and I've fallen through about 11 times in my life, 10 or 11. But there's a reason why when I fish early ice, you'll see me next to the shore. It's because if stuff goes wrong, I want to at least be able to like get out or break ice enough to walk out, whatever it may be. I fish in Taro. Usually my first day out on Taro is like the first week in November, usually really early, because it's just unbelievable the amount of fish you catch in that amount of time. And I have a float suit nowadays, so I feel a lot safer out there with that thing. And we had a real cold day that came through. It was a negative 10 or something like that. And so the whole bay by the South Shore boat ramp was frozen for like a week, and all of a sudden it got really cold, and it capped the whole lake. but most of the lake was only like this thick,
Ooh.
but this one little cove, it got a lot thicker. We were talking close to 3, almost 4 inches of clear ice in some places, and so I'm like, well, we'll spud bar our way out there, like I was like, it's really cold right now, so we may only have until about noon to fish. Like we don't want to push our luck at this spot,
Right.
And lo and behold, our friend, he's an explorer, man. He's always going further and further and further and pushing the limits, Eventually we find this one area, and we'll go way further than what I thought we should be going. And we're out there ice fishing, and lo and behold, he just keeps walking around, and he ends up stepping on a snow patch.
Oh no!
Right next to where our huts were, actually, and it goes right through. And because that's the thing, is that time of year, you just have to be aware of your surroundings, aware of everything. It's a time of year where you have to be super, super careful. And it's still not safe. No matter what anybody says, it's still not safe, And so I end up running back and grabbing a couple straps out of my, luckily he was wearing a striker ice suit, at least just the jacket. For whatever reason, he was wearing waders. I don't understand why, but was wearing waders and chest waders and had a striker ice suit on top, Lo and behold, he goes in, fills up, and only reason why I noticed he didn't make a noise, but like I'm always looking around just in case when I have a big group of people, because it's like I just want to make sure nobody gets hurt, And I see his blue hood just bobbing in the ice. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is insane, So we had to run like 300 yards to him, and then run past him to grab my ropes, and because for whatever reason, he didn't have his spikes on him or nothing. I threw my spikes at him, and like he just wasn't prepared, you could say, Lo and behold, I threw my ropes at him, and we pulled him out, and dried him off in my hut, and got him back into the truck before no time, But it could have easily been really bad, and that's still bad. That's still horrible,
Right.
But the important thing is, people, I hear this all the time. Why do you bring so much stuff with you? It's because I have had so many crazy experiences out on the ice that you just never know, man. Like you just have no idea. Like I always bring twice as much propane. I try to bring more water. I try to bring, extra ropes, extra cleats, you'll see me early ice, I'll have life jackets and throwables. And like, you just never know, man. And
there's nothing wrong with that.
That's extra safety stuff, like the one thing I think I don't have, which I should have, is a first aid kit. And I just never, for whatever reason, I don't even think about Band-Aids. I don't. Yeah.
With musky fishing, I think that's one of the first things I think of would be some kind of Band-Aid or something to stop bleeding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's one thing that I will be 100%. I'm embarrassed to say I don't think I even have. I'm pretty sure I don't have a first aid kit for my boat or my sled. Like and that's something you should always have. That's definitely on the plan of things to get. I was talking about my business partner about that the other day. I was like, why don't we have anything like that? Like I was like, because we're always just like, just grab a paper towel, man, wrap it on.
Yeah, be a man, duct tape it.
Yeah, exactly.
Does Cougar Baits have a website somewhere where people could go and look through the catalog?
At the moment, there is not a website. I'm working on a website. I've been so gosh darn busy, but that's no real excuse. I don't have a website as of now. I just have Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
Facebook it's Cougar Baits Fishing Lures, and on Instagram is Cougar Baits LLC. And you can look on. I do have a small shop on Facebook, but Facebook is also limiting on the amount that you're allowed to actually post.
Yeah.
And so I don't have all of my baits posted on there on my shop. I have some, but not all of them.
Okay.
I do have almost all of my designs on Instagram. What most people do is they just write me out a list of what they want, and then I write it down, and you'll usually get an invoice from me in a couple days. I try now with my bigger orders, I do like a 50% down type of thing, because unfortunately, as most custom bait makers know, they'll eventually have some people that just don't end up paying for them,
Absolutely.
When they're custom. So nowadays I just kind of have to do the whole 50% thing.
No.
But I mean, but on small orders or orders on baits that I sell tons of, I don't really care. I'll just send it when I get the invoice. Usually the baits are ready to go. When
Right.
you get the invoice, they're usually ready to go that day. But yeah, man, it's. I really appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, this is awesome. It was something that. I mean, bait making is something that I think you're going to see a lot of cool stuff in the next couple of years. Come out of Cougar Baits. I mean, we're only going to. I mean, as far as I can see, the sky's the limit on this one. I've tried to get into a couple of stores in Florida. I've talked to a bunch in Tennessee.
Mhm.
I'm working on one in Canada, but I'm working, and then two I'm working on in Wisconsin as well. So there's going to be a lot more people hearing about this company in the next year or so. You'll see more. I make merchandise. So as you can see, I'm wearing like the shirts.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my logo on the back, and then I got like the Colorado flag on the sleeve.
Yeah.
I make sure that everything is high quality. It took me 2 weeks to pick a shirt, because I couldn't find one that I was like in love with, and eventually the lady, the t-shirt shop, was like, this one, I think you're really going to like,
Mhm.
And so I go and I try it on. I'm like, it was 95 that day. I walked outside and I was like, I feel like I'm in the shade right now.
Yeah.
It's so nice. It's like a cotton polyester. And then in the summertime, I actually make a sun long sleeve, like for fly fishing guides, the
Yeah.
long sleeve with the hood, things like that. And it's the same. You walk outside in 90-degree heat I'm bald, man. So I need as much UV protection as possible. I know this is as long as this thing goes, man. I'm going to shave her off. I'm bald. So like, I like to I can't be just baking in the sun all day long.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I usually have a hat on when I'm outside, because of such. Like I'm a redhead, man. My dad had melanoma. You know what I mean? Like I can't skin cancer is a real thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so to wear the UV protectant systems are huge, and a lot of those things dry really quick, like that muskie got me soaked. And from head to toe, it was hot as hell, so it didn't matter. But like I was soaked, and I dried off in like 20 minutes. I mean, that material is so awesome nowadays. We don't just have cotton t-shirts anymore, like we got some really cool stuff out there.
Yeah.
And that's why I make the baits as such, you want every part of your brand to kind of be on that same level,
Sure.
And that's exactly it. It's trying to keep your brand, through and through the best and top quality as possible. I'll preach that through and through. I think the next step is trying to find people that are willing to tie baits to that quality. It's to help me out. That's the hardest thing. I thought I kind of thought, finding fly fishing guides would probably be my best bet. Guys that are just in the wintertime, that are bored, because they're not going to want to guide them in the wintertime. They're usually just hanging out. And those guys you want to really, you want to keep around. You want to keep them in the mountain. Like I live like right next to Buena Vista, right below Buena Vista, and it's a shame that we live in such a beautiful place, but there's no real economy. The only economy is the tourism. Rafting. We live in a rafting town. And last year when we were almost not able, the rafting companies were almost not able to open. Like that's literally all of our money just down the drain. We can't just like a skiing town. If they can't open their slopes, where are they going to make their money? And so like those guides, a lot of them moved away. Like they just moved away. Like one of my friends, Mike, he does guiding in the Florida Keys too.
Mm-hmm.
He's been doing that for years, but like he guides in the Florida Keys, and he used to guide for Arc Anglers, but now he doesn't really guide anymore because there wasn't any work. It was like, dude, like what am I supposed to do? The fishing's phenomenal, but nobody can come here because of COVID,
Right.
and all this stuff, so it's a crazy thing, and I hope that it comes back in full swing. I mean, this area is a beautiful place, and people love. I mean, if you've ever fished the Ark Valley, man, you got to. It's the Arkansas River fishes great all year round.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be in the middle of winter, and I fished it in January, and I live like right in front of Browns Canyon.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a beautiful place, and the fish are huge. I mean, that's the thing is that it's all gold medal water,
Right.
Some of the biggest browns I've ever seen in my life are in that river. I mean, it is a crazy, crazy thing. But in the summertime, it gets absolutely trampled with whitewater rafting because the whitewater is insane.
Right.
But yet again, that's part of the challenge, is trying to fish around all those, around all those rafters and everything. And I'm sure the guides will figure it out, and I'm sure the guides will, be back on track before no time. But yeah, man, I'm sorry I get rambling, man. I apologize.
All right.
But I really appreciate all this, man. This is phenomenal. I mean, I'd be more than happy to, if you want to do this a year from now, I'm more than happy to do it to see where the heck we go from, come.
I was going to tell you, I'd love to see where you're at a year from now. With your bigger deals, with your production, how you've changed things. I think it'd be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that I've been thinking about doing and expanding into. I've thought about the wooden baits, the big musky wooden baits. I have a woodworking shop, so I thought that maybe I could, go into that realm too. But I want to perfect, things before I move on to others, Yep. And when you and if I can't find anybody to help me tie, then I'm kind of stuck just tying.
Yeah.
That's as I don't know, what do you do for your day job? What do you do on the day?
So I'll give you the quick and dirty. My wife and I moved here last year, and it was one of those things where whoever got the job first, the other person was going to stay home and take care of kids. So that's what I do.
Okay.
I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Okay. Well, that's cool, man.
Yeah. So if you need an extra tire, I could certainly help you because I've got all kinds of free time.
Okay. Well, that's definitely something that I could definitely explore, and you're right next. So
John,
have you ever heard of peak flyby